So this case is made specifically for the Ruida model RDC 6442S-B panel made by Cloudray. And I don't know if there are different versions of this. Sometimes that is the case when we buy stuff from overseas. It's made by different manufacturer. So what's crucial here is that these 4 screws location has to be precisely matched with the casing here. So we can use the ruler and see the center of the Phillips screw head from one end to another is 13 centimeter, and vertically is 8. So before you make this purchase, please make sure these measurements are correct. We are going to use the 4 screws to mount the casing onto here, onto the panel. So we need to remove the back panel here. Once the 4 screws are removed, the back panel comes right off easily. And the my unit on the other end of this cable, interface cable, it has hot glue on it to prevent the wire from being pulling loose. But these hot glue made it wide enough for it not to be able to pass through the Ethernet opening on the back of the Polar. So what I found, the easiest way to do it, instead of removing the hot glue here, which can be a pain, we simply going to unplug this interface here and this plug here, which is identical to the other end here, without the hot glue. So that way we can easily push this guy through the Ethernet opening on the back of the Polar. And there is a clip here. You simply push it down with your nail and pull the plug out. The thing is, I cannot do it with one hand. It has to be done with 2 hands. So I'm going to pause the video. Once the plug is being unplugged from the motherboard, and there is a cable stop ring here, you just lift it up and the cable is loose. So we're going to push this end through the Polar's Ethernet opening. Turn off the switch and unplug it just in case. Now we are going to remove the top left panel here. It's fastened together by 2 screws, one in the front and one in the back. I have already loosened it because I only got one hand. So it is the same location on the opposite side. So this one here and this one back there. And there are 2 sets of a wire that connect to the underside of the top left panel somewhere around this area. So what you can do is, once you got the panel loosened, you can close the lid and use 2 hands and flip this thing over and rest on top of the cover. Make sure you put some kind of cloth here so that it doesn't scratch the glass. Okay, once we have the top left panel flip over resting on top of the cover, we can access to these 2 sets of wires here. And you can leave the panel on top of the cover, but I recommend you go ahead and unplug these guys. So that way we can take the entire left top panel off the machine and open up the lid, and that will give us more area to work in this area here. As you can see, part of the laser tube is exposed, and when we're working in this area, we want to be extremely careful not to drop anything onto it or causing it to break. Remove the Ethernet port So the two screws has already been removed. You do it with the Allen wrench that came with the machine. Once you have the two Allen bolts removed, then we can push the gantry back because as you can see, the laser tube is partially exposed, and this is made of glass, so we don't want to break it. Gently push it back over to the front. Then we can go ahead and loosen the Ethernet port and just set aside for now. We have separated the data cable from the control panel. We are going to push this in through the Ethernet opening here. I'm going to set the camera down so you can see easier. And you simply just go horizontally into the port and turn and give a little push, and right there that's easy, super easy compared to the other way around. All right, and make sure you are pushing the cable through from the inside out, all right, not outside in, because this end coming out of here goes back to the panel, the control panel, and this end, if I can get to it, there you go, this end will go into the actual brain, which is below this panel here. Now we have the control panel cable through the Ethernet port opening already. We are going to do the same with the USB cable. We're going to do it with the male end of the USB cable. But this time we're going to do it from the outside. We're going to push it through the outside into the in, like this. All right. The reason being is because the female end of it is too wide to push it through the to the Ethernet opening there. Now we're going to access the actual controller, which sits underneath this piece of a metal sheet here, and is held down by 3 screws. And we're going to remove it with the Allen wrench that came with the machine. All right. Okay, once the 3 screw has been removed, you simply lift up the plate and set it aside. Now we can see the controller underneath it. And the controller panel's cable that actually plug into this side right there, as you can see, there is pretty much no way you can get to it without taking out the controller. And that is the best way to do it. And it's very simple. So the controller is bolt down by 2 screws, one here and one there. So the easiest way to do this is by removing these 2 cables first. This is the USB PC cable. So you just simply put it out. And the Ethernet cable, there is a locking tab underneath the cable. So make sure you squeeze it and put it out. All right. So after you pull out these 2 cables, you can have easier access to the screw here. And yours might be on the opposite side, or it could be on all 4 corners. It really depends. So if you see on both sides, just remove them both. Same thing on the other side. Here, right? This one and that one right there. Okay, now the screw size is being removed. You simply grab the cable on this end and lift it up the entire controller and tilt on one side. Then you have easier access to the control panel's cable that goes in here. So I can't do it with one hand, but this end goes in here. Then the USB male cable will go into here, the middle. All right. Now I have the USB cable plugged in, and so is the control panel plug into the controller itself. And notice where my USB cable goes into. So it goes around underneath the step motor and follow along this channel here where the other wires are. What we want to do is we want to zip tie the USB cable onto these wires like they already did with the others, as you can see. I don't know, it's kind of the dark. And same thing with the controller panel cable. We want to go around this channel or this groove here. So we want to make sure that both USB and the control panel go underneath the gantry here. We're going to put it back gently. There we go. Let's go right in there. And we're going to zip tie them along the way. Okay? Zip tie to the existing wires. So that way, the wire won't come up. The wires won't come up, get in the way of the gantry. All right? So now you can see the USB cable goes around underneath the step motor and along the sidewall, and same thing with the controller cable that goes around, going here. So we just want to make sure we zip tie them nicely, go all the way through here, and to make sure it's all the way to the end, so that way the gantry can still move without touching the cable. Now we have all the necessary cables plugged back into the controller. Before we tie down everything and close the top, we need to do a test run to make sure everything working properly. So doing this, we need to power the machine back on. All right, so one thing we want to make sure is that there is nothing getting in the way of the gantry moving, right? And we're not going to cut anything. We just want to power up and test the controller panel, make sure that everything is working properly, including the USB cable, the U-disc port. I don't know what they call the U-disc port. Maybe you guys can help me know. Okay, the machine is on now. We just want to test. Make sure it's working. All right. So the control panel is working. So we are going to test the USB cable next. I have loaded 2 RD files onto the USB thumb drive. We're gonna plug it in. Make sure we're in the right direction. And now it's plugged into the cable. Then we are going to, let's see, get my camera working. There you go. Now we are going to load the files, or check the files, I should say. So push files, and here you see the second one from the top, it says U-Disc Plus. So we're gonna select that, arrow down, and push enter. Then it says Redisc on the very top one. That's what we want. So we're just gonna hit enter. Alright, there. 2 RD files. So now we know the USB cable is also working properly, and we can go ahead and finish up the installation by putting the control panel into the casing itself. I didn't realize the camera's microphone wasn't working until I finished recording the following. So the voice and video is gonna be a bit out of sync. Now we are going to install the USB port into the case. This is the female end of the cable. It doesn't matter which way it goes in, either way what works. So you insert the female end into the case. Make sure it doesn't stick out like that. If it does, just push it in. There is a stop at the end. We'll stop it. It should be flush with the top surface. And we're going to loop the cable into the opening like this. Then we are going to install the control panel onto the case. It is important that we put the control panel's data cable underneath the USB cable. Then it will fit right in like this. In this step, we will insert the both USB and control panel's cable into the cable sleeve. So this is a split cable sleeve, meaning that you can just slide the cables into the sleeve. Once you peel the sleeve open like this, then you simply slide the 2 cables into the sleeve. Make sure that both cables are being wrapped into the sleeve like this. Then you repeat the process for the entire length of the cables until it reaches the outside of the Ethernet port. In this step, we are going to install the cable stop. It's a flexible piece that clamps the cable sleeve onto the case. Alright, simply slide over the sleeve, and there is a groove that fits into opening's track. You simply lift up the sleeve and slide the cable stop forward, then drop it in into the opening's track. For demonstration purpose, I have the opening facing the camera instead of facing me, so I'm struggling here a little bit because I cannot see it. It is important to note that once the cable stop is in place, there should be a bit of the cable sleeve left on the other end of the cable stop. We are now going to install the control panel onto the case using the 4 screws that come with the control panels. Right? And we're going to do this diagonally. We're going to start at one corner, then move on diagonally to the opposite side, and do this on all 4 screws. Next, we are going to put the zip tie around the cable stop. This will further clamp down the cable sleeve, preventing the cables from sliding around. Make sure it's nice and tight. Then we're going to put the cover piece onto the case. It's a snap-on. So just make sure you push down around the edges, and they will snap right on. Now we are going to tidy up the cables. For demonstration purpose, I have removed the two USB ports above the Ethernet opening. You don't need to do this. Now we are going to tidy up the other end of the cable sleeve. The easiest way is by pushing both sleeve and the cables into the Polar. So that way you have easier access to the cables, and the cables can be easily slide into the sleeve. The other end of cable sleeve should look something like this. You have about 2 inches into the Polar, and now we're going to put the cable plug onto the cable sleeve. So this is like a clamp that squeezes the cable sleeve, preventing the cable sliding outward. It's a flexible piece. You simply just bend it and put it over the cable. And you should have about 1.5 inches right here. Then you simply squeeze it and use a bit of force and push it into the opening. It's a snap fit. When you reach the end, you'll feel a snap like this. Then we are going to put the cable stop right behind the cable plug, and this further secures the cables, preventing it being pulled from the outside. We are going to use a zip tie to tie the cable stop right in the groove. Make sure it's nice and tight. So now the cable should be very secured. Cable plug is now secured. We can tidy up the cables between the controller and the end of the cable sleeve using the zip ties. It's easier if you tilt the controller unit on the side, so you can put the zip tie underneath these cables. They can be hard to reach if the controller is sitting flat on the frame. After you tidy up the cables, secure the controller with the screws onto the frame. Then place the metal cover plate on top of the controller. In this final step, we are going to further secure the cable, and we are also going to protect the Ethernet port by putting a cap on it. The cap will prevent any dust get into the Ethernet port in case we want to use it in the future. I added 2 more zip ties to the cables, especially to the USB PC cables above the Ethernet port. This further secures the cables, making sure they don't get in the way of the gantry. Okay, so the final step is to reconnect the light bar cables and the interlock cables plug, if you have removed them, and flip the panel over and put it back on the machine.